Is that you?
That's me. How you doing?
What's going on? It is HPR, member supported Hawaii Public Radio, all things considered. I'm Dave Lawrence. Grateful to have you here with us. As the pandemic has progressed, with no touring musicians coming to the state, we've been speaking to artists around the world remotely, as we used to do as well, but more so now, hearing how the virus has affected them from the profound health and economic fallout we've all been exposed to through news reports and our own experiences, to ways they've been touched personally and professionally. And if you've heard conversations we've had with everybody from Jack Johnson to Soul Asylum's Dave Perner, Carlos Santana and his wife Cindy, Al Di Meola, Alice Cooper, Jimmy Webb, and so many more, you know it's caused a range of reactions and a number of impacts, too, to people's tours, albums, and books. And one of those cats is the guy we're talking to today, Joe Satriani himself. He had a new record come out right in the heart of the initial portion of the crisis, Shape Shifting it's called. Then, of course, the tour for that also had to be adjusted, rescheduled to start in April of 2021. Joe, a phenomenal player and super nice guy. He's been on with us several times before. He's got a resume that includes working with Mick Jagger, Deep Purple, his supergroup Chickenfoot. He does guitar tours with that evolving Project G3, and his website calls him the world's most commercially successful solo guitar performer. 6 gold and platinum discs to his credit, including 1 more gold award for the debut by Chickenfoot. And we are so grateful to hear about shape shifting and so much more as we welcome Joe Satriani, back to the show right now. Aloha, mahalo, big socially distant hugs and high fives for you.
That's wonderful. It's very nice to be back, even though we're doing it through cyberspace or whatever they call it now.
It's a great.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I'm glad that we have the technology to make it work too.
Yeah.
And so, where are you now? Before we get into the album's music, share, I guess, some stories of where you are now and when you first got word of the pandemic and how it began to impact the record and the tour.
Well, I'm at home in San Francisco, sheltered in place, doing well. And It's a good place to be. It's funny how, half of the year, I think if you just kind of take all the years and average them together, half of every year I'm around the world. I'm in a different city every night playing. And then the other half of the year, I get to stay home and become a musical hermit. And all I do is write and record music and paint and draw. And I just got forced into doing that a little bit more. And I guess last year, we did a lot of recording, and I did touring with the Experienced Hendrix group. So it was a kind of a different year anyway. And then, as you mentioned, we finished the album right around January 1st, and we delivered all the parts. I shot a video with my son around late January, early February. Came back, did all the press with my webmaster, and then all of a sudden, like 2 days later, the lockdown happened. And we were fortunate that we had all this stuff in the can. And so we really just had to stop and think personally and, on our street and our community, like, what can we do to, lower this curve, to slow it down, anything we can do. So, yeah, everybody had to wear masks. And so, while we had all that stuff in the can, we had to forget about the music for a bit. Luckily, my friends at Sony Legacy felt the same way I did, which was, we've got all this music and we shouldn't delay releasing it just because it's less advantageous for us from a business point of view. It's always good to release music and then show up in person. So that's always great. It's never a guarantee. Nobody knows how to make a record a hit. So you can kind of forget about thinking you can figure it out, because you can't. But one thing you can figure out is that I'm a musician. My job is to make music, and people out there need music. So why hold it back? So we just thought, okay, this will be different. The company and myself had never tried to release an album in the middle of a pandemic, but we thought, why don't we do it? It's perfect to escape the reality of this horrible tragedy that we're fighting against. So this is one of those moments where you really understand what your job is, and mine is to make music for people. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm sticking to it. That's what I've been doing the months that I've been at home, and that's what I've been doing this morning. And I'll probably do some on the air with you.
And part of that is also in addition to playing, and that's a wonderful thing, and we're excited to get to hear some of Joe playing for us. But on the note of what you're talking about, staying busy, I assume some of that is sharing your music and your passion for it during these Club Joe streaming sessions that you've been doing.
Yeah, we try to join in with all of our friends and provide something just a little bit different. Some people are really great at staring into the little green light, playing acoustic guitar, piano, and singing, and that's the gift of someone who's got a great voice and who can communicate with their voice. It's a little bit more difficult for an electric guitarist who's focuses on instrumental music. And that would be me. And I haven't got the band here, as you can see. Your audience can't see it, but I haven't got the band here. And one of the things that I told my managers, was, what I really love is getting in front of a few thousand people and using that energy and creating a moment. And this thing of staring into the little green light on my laptop is not working. It's like I don't feel moved the same way. It's like it's not an audience to me. So what else can we do to keep in touch with our fans and give them something they can't find somewhere else? And I pointed out that some really great young shredders are out there, and they play the most amazing things on guitar for 20 seconds. That's exactly what you want for Instagram. But we wanted something with a little bit more substance for all the fans, not just the fans that are out there looking to improve their technique or something like that. So we thought it should be more based on the catalog that the fans know and all the people that have been involved with making those records. So as you pointed out, we called it Club Joe because that was an extension of what we used to do on tour. And we thought, well, let's just call John Petrucci and Steve Vai and the Bissonette brothers and Sammy Hagar and, Chad Smith, everyone. Let's just get everybody involved. And so it's been fun.
I think it's a great way to, and then you see, as you pointed out, like a lot of different people have tried different ways because what are you going to do? You're kind of locked. If you're going to try to stay safe, you're taking a moment, you're taking a pause. And so you also have projects that have kind of been out there, as you put it, and decided to go ahead with it. So it makes sense to kind of adapt and to be a bit new in terms of the way you go about promoting it, which is kind of like when you dial back and you just think about the business, it's sort of evolved anyway, even without the coronavirus. There have been so many different hiccups and bumps and changes with the way that you guys deliver music and then have to promote it. You said something really kind of important, though. You were talking about, because Joe is also a guitar teacher. He continues to offer, people learn a lot from his technique, and he knows how to instruct people. But when I think of some of the cats, there have been some people who have been lost during the pandemic. I think of like Ellis Marsalis, for example. I guess when you said that about the instructional part and you going beyond that, I thought of some of the folks that we've lost, like him, the father of the Marsalis brothers, and John Prine, Fountains of Wayne's Adam Schlesinger, Manu Dibango. Those just named some of the ones that either we paid tribute to or that come to mind. Have you been touched in that way by this crisis in terms of some of the cats that we've lost, or more close people who weren't necessarily celebrities or famous, but that were in your life?
Well, I've been really, fortunate that my close friends and family are still doing well. And, my family is an extended family that stretches from Singapore across the U.S. into Europe. I still have relatives on the Italian peninsula and family members here and in New York. Some of us are a little bit older than others, and so we're really in that age group where we got to stay home and stay masked up and be very careful. So it's crazy, and I was just thinking, just because I was talking to my son last night, and I haven't seen him in months, and I don't know when is the next time I'm going to get to hug him. I don't know. It's just it's very difficult for everybody on just that family level. And you're right. When you look across the entertainment industry, we've started to lose people, and it's tragic. it's really tragic. But courage is the word of the day. It's just we've got to meet this head on. There's no turning back. Time only moves forward, and you may not be a doctor or a scientist that can really get their hands dirty with this thing. But if you're like me and you're a musician, music make people happy, make them forget for a bit. You know, that's what we do.
Yeah, it is. And you've got a real moment to do that. I mean, it seems like multiple crises layered over top of each other: the virus, Black Lives Matter, civil rights, police, a lot of division in the United States, from politics to even wearing masks, even generals you never would have thought of warning that our democracy is itself in crisis. And then I think like you're at home, not only with the record, which we're about to talk about, but you, before I forget about it, painting and drawing, you've been doing a little bit more of. And obviously a musician is inspired by the things they take in. Talk a little bit about that other artistic output that I'm not sure if everyone is aware of that you do.
Well, I started a really long time ago, and the first time my scribbling, got used was in the '92 release of the Extremist album and booklet, back when we used to sell CDs, and then they morphed into being used for guitar straps that Planet Waves and now D'Addario makes for me, and then other album covers, and after a while, I thought, this is fun doing it, manipulating some of these pencil drawings in the computer. So I would scan, computerize, and then alter. I released a book back in, I guess it was 13, just to sell to our fans at the merch desk and through our website. And then I thought to myself, this is crazy. My sisters are professional artists. My son has a degree in art. My wife has a degree in art. Somebody should teach me how to paint. So one day I asked my wife, I was like, please, how do I do it? It's like, I don't really know. All I know is, pen and ink and all that stuff. So I turned our old playroom downstairs into an art studio, and I started painting, and I really got into it. And, it's an acquired taste. I paint some really weird stuff. And there's a company in LA, this conceptual art group called Scene 4, and they started to see some of my stuff pop up in social media, and they reached out and said, hey, we want to do canvases. We want to, photograph you using our unusual technique, but we also want you to paint on top of these canvases that we create using our art system. And so anyway, we did have an art showing last year, a gallery showing, and the paintings have been selling online. But I told him, look, what I really want to do is I've got about 100 canvases now, but I really want to get to 300 somehow in galleries. It's just something I thought would be a cool thing to do. So I'm in the middle of that, but you can see I'm pointing over there outside this little control room in the big room. Used to be just filled with canvases, pretty much a mess, paint and canvases and all that. And right now it's a huge green screen setup, because my wife has been filming me playing a song off the new album, and she's been sending the files to my son down in LA, and he's creating an unusual video for that song. And so I've had to pause for the last 2 weeks in the painting and just look like an idiot in front of the green screen. But
all I can think of is Sly Stone. It's a family affair, because it just it just seems
I mean, it's funny. We started bringing my son out on tour when he was 4, first G3 tour. And so he's traveled around the world with us. He made a documentary for me that people can see on Quello. So it's streaming. You can check it out on YouTube, obviously, called Beyond the Supernova. He has a degree in art and filmmaking, and he's a budding filmmaker down in LA. So every once in a while, he's very kind enough to make a video for me. So he did one for 1980. People can check that out on YouTube. That was really fun. A lot of fun in front of all those Marshall stacks.
Yeah, no, I was going to mention that. That's the one that you've done a video for, and obviously more coming. And that's great when you talk about the painting and all these. This is a cat who's got a lot of different textures, obviously, in his life, and shape shifting. is sort of, for me, it felt like there were so many different kinds of moods on this. And it's not that it's a new thing. You've had a lot of different moods over the years, but I was attracted rather, to a lot of the slower, more moody jams. Like one of them, All for Love, for example. There are a few that really caught my ear, with a slower tempo, some searing, emotional guitar work. Take us a little bit, and I know you have a series for hardcore fans. You can check out his little video explainers that he's done for all these songs on YouTube. So you can get, it's kind of like real heavy duty offer of information for anyone who's interviewing him, but it's also great for anyone who's a fan. But talk about All for Love and where that's coming from.
I'm glad you picked that song, because the story is really complicated and long, and I'll try to crystallize it for you and your audience. So back in the late 90s, I started working with this keyboard that I had purchased for the tour. It was a Kurzweil K2000, and it was a DAW, which means you can record on it and had sequencing and stuff. So I started writing things that had nothing to do with guitar. I started writing orchestral pieces for fun, and so I came up with this 2.5-minute piece. And I thought, oh, this would be great as like an opener for a song, or maybe it stays orchestral. There's never any guitar. And about a year or two later, I finally get my first Pro Tools rig, and so I transfer it to Pro Tools. I make a CD. I got together with John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, because we had been talking about maybe doing an orchestral project. I gave him a CD. That didn't really go anywhere. I forgot about it, literally. And then every once in a while, it would, when I'd go to do an album, it would be there on my desk, and I'd listen to it and I go, God, it's so hard to play something like that on guitar, because you have to do it. The concentration of emotion on those single strings in those octaves is very, very difficult. It's not like playing a fast song, which is really quite easy. Yeah, I would say it's the slow ones that are the most difficult to play, to put over. You really have to muster all of your talent, all of your emotion, and just really focus it on the texture, the phrasing, the tone, just everything comes to bear. It is really nothing like, running around stage, playing something really fast and flashy and pointing to the audience. That requires far less talent, So anyway, to get back to the story, when I'm putting together music for this album, again, this recording pops up. This time it's just a file on my desk. I listen to it and I say, maybe now's the time to put it on guitar. And it took very little rearranging. So I actually used the original file from the late 90s and got it into Pro Tools and worked around it and added stuff to it, and added a rhythm guitar part and just sort of stretched it a bit. And then when we showed up to do the recording, I have to admit, the first 9 takes were really brutally horrible. It was exactly, went wrong is exactly what I mentioned before, which was, it was just so hard to play and keep the guitar quiet with that amount of gain on it and all that attention on it. There's no room for error. It would be like if you heard a beautiful singer and there was all this other noise, guitar noise around it. It would be distracting, So this is the plight of the instrumental guitarist, right? Anyway, so finally, take 10. Again, it's me playing live in the studio, so I had to make sure I didn't wind up out of tune halfway through the song. So there were areas where I thought, you better play it cool. Like I could be crazier, but then the guitar would be out of tune and I wouldn't be able to, use it for the rest of the song. And so this one performance happened. It was take 10. And suddenly I walk into the control room and everybody looks at me and says, oh my God, that's it. Whatever you just did, that's it. And so I realized, oh man, this is, if people like this and I have to do this on stage, I'm screwed, because this is hard work. But, once I got over that and I could just sit like a normal human being and listen to it, then I realized, oh, this is exactly what I always hoped it would be. I just wanted it to really touch people's hearts. And
oh, that's great. Well, I mean, I think you did touch, and that's you really explained a lot, because you are known as that kind of like shredder cat, and the how many notes per minute sort of thing that occurs when somebody like you or Steve Vai, is doing that kind of Yngwie Malmsteen-ish sort of approach. But at the same time, you have these other moments, and they are really They're very, very touching. You've had them through the years, like that jam that you had written for your pop. What was the name of that one? That was
Oh, crying.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've had this. It's not the first time that you've really touched people with this kind of. Like you said, it's a lot more stressful and a lot more of a production to get the slower stuff where each note starts to
Yeah.
matter. And then you have some interesting titles too on here, Joe, which Ali Farka, Dick Dale, and Alien and Me. I keep thinking Ali Farka Torre, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
like Dick is an amazing dude, and your connection to aliens with your album titles. What's going on with that one?
I've got this thing going with another musician, a brilliant musician named Ed Evett, and he's famous for his singer songwriting and playing a fretless mirror glass fret. What would you call it? Non-fretted fretboard guitar. um, Ned Evett's his name. And anyway, we're writing partners, and we have a company called Satriani, and we create stories for animated TV, movie, stuff like that. And so we've been working on this thing called Crystal Planet for maybe 6, 7 years. And anyway, so at one point when we were, thought we were getting close to getting a deal to produce this thing, I realized while I was at home from tour, I had to make these music cues. So I'd be busy making all these funny cues. And one of them that I came across when I was reviewing music for the album was this funny little sort of Euro North African kind of rhythm thing that sounded very techno-y. I was listening to it, and I picked up my guitar and I started playing to it, and I instantly started sort of paying homage to the great Ali Farka Touré. And I thought, oh, this is really cool. So I just recorded that moment on my phone, and I went back out on tour for the Experience Hendrix tour, and I'd listen to it every day, and I thought, oh, this is something I should do, like a tribute song to Ali Farka. I should really do it because I love his playing, and people should know about this, and it would be a great moment of on a record to tip my hat to somebody else, And then we got the news that Dick Dale had passed away. But I thought, what if? And this is a crazy way that I think sometimes. What if, like, I'm having a daydream. I'm at a party, Oasis, North Africa. I don't know if they have them there in North Africa, but anyway, I'm just sort of daydreaming, and I'm there, and Ali Farka is there, and Dick Dale is there, and we get up on stage with the band, and we're jamming. And we get visited by an alien as well, and we just take turns. We hand off the song to the next guy. You know what I mean? So I thought, okay, that means I'm going to have to play like Ali Farka. I'm going to have to play like Dick Dale. I'm going to have to play like me, and then I'm going to have to let this alien come in and out. So it took me a couple of months to lay it out in Pro Tools and figure out who should play next, like who hands off to whom,
Right.
And but I just love doing it. I was, I had my fingers crossed that my co-producer Jim Scott would like it, and that everybody else would say, "I love this. This is going to be so much fun," because it was going to take love and an attitude of fun to pull this thing off, and everyone just brought cool stuff. They understood their part in the song and how they were going to make it work for this handoff between these famous giants that we were going to pay homage to.
You have such an interesting imagination. You have a really cool imagination. It's kind of like those Babar books when we were kids. It's just, I love the places that you think to go. And this record, another one, in all the times, we haven't talked that many times, maybe 4 or 5 times over the years, but we've never, I don't think, talked about reggae, which is a deep, big thing in Hawaii. Hawaii, one of the top-selling forms of music. There's also something locally called Jawaiian, and I mean, there's a lot of reverence to reggae here. You see Bob Marley's face everywhere. It's almost like a Dead show in the 80s where you see Jerry's face everywhere. You see Bob everywhere here, and I just can't even imagine this kind of thing coming out of you, the distinct vibe on Here, the Blue River, nice groove to hear. I watched your little video explainer with the connection to Ralph Waldo Emerson, and the meaning. So both talk about the meaning, but also something you didn't explain in that little explainer video is like where did you first get turned on to reggae, and have you seen Bob back when you were young? I mean, do you have a bunch of reggae in your collection, or experiences meeting, seeing some of the legendary reggae cats?
Oh, my experience was my first experience to reggae, I do believe, was when I came out to California. I was in my teens, and I followed my sister and her husband out just for a month or so to hang out instead of just sweating it out on Long Island for another summer. And they were nice enough to let me jump in the car. We drove across. Great fun driving across the country, and when you're that young, and had great experiences. And that was the year that Bob Marley and the Wailers exploded, and Eric Clapton's "I Shot the Sheriff" was on the radio, and my sister and her husband were, reggae aficionados, so there was lots of reggae that I got to listen to.
Okay.
And I always loved the vibe and the feel, and it reminded me, of. It showed me how different we are, in how we grow, in where we grow up, and I was a typical Long Island kid. And so I had my musical sensibilities based on where I grew up, where I went to school, who my friends were, what was on the radio, and what my siblings listened to. I was the youngest of five, so I basically was schooled by my older siblings and my parents. So when I started to get into these reggae artists, I realized, wow, you grow up in a different place, a little island in the Caribbean. That's about as far away from Long Island as you can get in terms of your musical culture. We're gonna, I know they hear Black Sabbath, in Jamaica, but it means less to them, and just the way for me, going to the Uniondale Coliseum and watching Black Sabbath, it sort of, it solidifies that moment in my upbringing. But reggae was something that was far away. It was exotic, So, but I was fascinated with it because I've always loved being a student of music in the larger sense, and I just thought this is so unique, and it's the same 12 notes. They've decided to play the beat like this, and to lean on these chords, and to play a lot here and not to play so much there, and ultimately I thought it really benefited, like some other forms of music, like hip hop. It's great when there's someone singing, rapping that has something good to say. And that makes the difference. When you hear instrumental hip hop, it's sort of like, you get the feeling something's missing.
Right.
So not all forms of music, all styles of music support vocals or just instruments. It's kind of like, I remember I used to love Sleepwalk by Santo and Johnny, and I did a version of that and got to talk to Johnny for a while about it. I wanted him to, give me his blessing. And it was then that I realized I had never in all my life knew that they actually released vocal version after the instrumental song was a hit. And of course, the vocal version just didn't work because it was written as an instrumental. And so there is a difference, And so that was the reason why for years I avoided reggae, because I felt like, wow, how can you replace Bob Marley's voice, and all the other great reggae singers who have such magnetism, such personality that they put into that arrangement, of that style. So it was completely natural. I was just sitting here in my studio, and for some reason I printed out that poem, The River, and I'm just reading it, and I just felt moved, and I started to write this song, and it came out reggae, and I thought, oh, that's really strange. But I just went with it. I never censor myself, which, gets me into a lot of trouble. There are a lot of songs that they don't turn out so good. But while I'm writing them, I never censor. I never stop myself from writing a style because, let's say, I don't think it's going to work with the current album or something. I just, I'm thankful for the inspiration, so I follow it through and see what happens later, you know.
Oh man, there's so much of that on there. There's this jam waiting that people will find, very different sound with a ton of piano and also another contemplative sort of vibe. And there's one. I mean, it's like really you summed it up really well what you were just saying about the reggae, because you kind of do this with a lot of other flavors. There's also Yesterday's Yesterday, which is a nice acoustic sound in portions of that, but also has whistling, which is and I listened to your explainer video, and that's a great point, because that's not a bit that's in a ton of tunes. So every time you do it, it's kind of like Queen with the stomping on the floor thing and We Will Rock You. Like different songs can utilize eccentric sounds to an incredible high point, and talk a little bit about like how, I heard you talk about it in your explainer, so but if you can for our audience, just explain how everybody ended up whistling on that.
Yeah, the song started so innocently. I walked into this room. I had my acoustic guitar, leg up on a stool. I start instantly playing this song for some reason. And I thought, oh, that's really funny. It's so happy. It's so uplifting. And so I just said I should record it, right? That's my job. Just write music. Just don't censor yourself. So I made a recording of me playing this whole song. And every time I went back to it, I kept thinking, this is so pure. It's so honest. I know it's got nothing to do with what people assume I am, based on my image. Like if you look at the album cover, they're not thinking of a song with acoustic guitars, banjo, and whistling. Right? So in a way, I was like, that actually made me think, oh, you should definitely do it just for the hell of it. So I put it together. I make a demo. I send, more songs than we need off to everybody involved, and I wait to see what the team thinks. And everybody loved that song. And I thought, well, great, that's good, because I just want to see what it's like to record it. And so we did have a great time recording it. And the whole thing about the whistling was, we're in the studio, we do 2 takes, we walk around to the control room, somebody's humming, somebody's whistling, and you laugh, and then you do another couple of takes, and these things happen. And people, if you're at Plyer Studio, when you walk out of the music room and into the big rec room, there's literally 2,000 instruments laying around. The electric ones were all turned on and in the PA, and Jim has every kind of percussion, every kind of string instrument, and it's just all laying around. And so people would just pick up stuff. They'd pick up a vibroslap or something, and they'd say, hey, how about this, And eventually that moment came where we were all sitting there just kind of whistling. And then we all looked at each other like, hey.
Exactly.
Like, and
Here
then
we
we
go.
said, no, and somebody says, no, you can't do that. And then we go, why can't we, And then, of course, everyone gets out their phones and they start Googling, biggest whistle hit, last whistle hit. Everyone's trying to remember. And I immediately went to, no, we're going to do the whistle, guys. Forget about Googling whistle songs. But my question was, who's going to whistle? Because I'm not a strong whistler. And I thought, do we hire like the first call whistle person in LA? Because we're an hour outside of LA. And or do you need like a whole bunch of people? Is it do you need 100 whistlers, or do you just have one guy and you record him a million times? And then he said, okay, let's the 3 of us go out there. So my editor, Eric Kodja, and my engineer, co-producer, Jim Scott, and myself went out, and we just stood underneath the drum mics, and we just whistled like 10 times. And then we did individuals. And then Eric went upstairs to the edit room, and he just sort of put them all together. And then the reason why it starts the song is because he brought us upstairs and he says, okay, this is as best as I can do. This is what we sound like. So he pushes play, and all you hear is the whistles and some reverb. And as soon as I hear it, I'm thinking, oh, that's got to be the beginning of the song. And of course, they're thinking I only want it at the end of the song. But it was just that moment in the afternoon, sitting upstairs at Pliers. Suddenly I had a memory of something, positive. And I thought, oh, that's it. That's going to be the thing that really invites people into this. And it's kind of, if we keep it distant, and then that acoustic guitar comes in, and it's like Joe's right in front of you playing. And I thought, oh, this will be a great moment,
Ah, It
No,
is.
no, no shredding or anything. No.
No. Well, that's the cool
Yeah.
thing is there's diversity, and that's what we've been talking about. Is there's a lot of little colors on the like a painter. There's a lot of different colors on your palette, I guess, if that's the way to put it. And
Yeah,
so
I guess so.
I wanted to highlight those because I don't think people, because you do have an image as the shredder and as somebody who might reference Black Sabbath as an influence, but when people hear some of this stuff, it would really blow their minds. It's very nice texture, and it's great because it's also because you have such a big imagination. I think for folks too, because there aren't words, you can kind of find your own stuff. So it's kind of like you're fusing
Yeah.
your imagination and allowing other people to then create like a little, a place, and they can go to different, I guess, destinations within it. And that is an acoustic kind of flavored jam, and we're fortunate because Joe is. We're not fortunate that we're all stuck in the places that we are because of what's happening, but we're fortunate that he's safe and that he is near one of his instruments or some of his, probably a lot of instruments in that place.
Too many.
Too many. So what would you like to play a song for your fans here at Hawaii Public Radio and in the
Yeah.
Aloha State?
Let's see if I was thinking about that today, and I told you before that I've had this acoustic guitar out with me because my wife's been filming me playing that acoustic song, and I should mention that song's got a performance, mandolin performance by Christopher Guest that he had to do remotely at the time. And Lisa Coleman came by and played piano on it, and Eric's playing squeezebox and marxophone. We're whistling. Of course, Chris Cheney on bass and Kenny Aronoff on drums. And I think even Jim Scott is banging what sounds like an anvil, but it's a big like parking truncheon out by the front door. So we really went to town with this. So, but I've got this instrument here and it's tuned to an open G because we're still doing some filming, and so I'll just play some stuff for you. That I'm just going to improvise. I have no idea what I'm going to do. All right. So I got a little beat going to get me going because I'm all by myself. I told you I hate looking at the little green light. So there we go. You should hear a good kick drum. Get me in the mood.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, Joe, we appreciate it, man. It's so cool to hear you, and a little bit of a little slide in there.
I did. I was trying to get it on my finger and then off my finger. I'm not sure where it went. It rolled on the floor, but that's the beauty of just winging it.
Oh, and it's cool. I mean, Joe Satriani just improvising, having some fun, sharing his talent from his home as he talks about his shape shifting record and his painting and drawing and his great experiences that you've had. When I hear you doing that with the slide, it just makes me think about concerts and that, especially because you had your own little arrangement, you had some accompaniment backing you, and I wonder when you have you been. I know you've obviously been connecting. Have you had Sammy on one of your Joe Sessions things? And it makes me think like, what are those guys up to? Your partners in Chickenfoot during this time down.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sam gave us a little clip, a little insight, a little joke, a little dig, as he usually does for me. Those guys are great. His Sammy's band, The Circle, has been putting out. Seems like every week or every 2 weeks they put out a cover song that they do remotely as a band. I think they just did Van Halen's "Right Now,"
Yep, yep.
a really cool arrangement. So he's keeping busy. Yeah, he harassed me about 2 days ago. We're filming actually, which is always good. It's always good to get harassed by Sammy Hagar. He always wants to know what you're doing and let's go do something. And I tell you, it's tough when you're used to being like, it's almost like a club. You're in a band with guys, and Sammy actually, when he's up here, lives really close. So there's a lot of hanging out that we do, and it's just really hard to put up with this isolation, and it's kind of driving us crazy. But at the same time, we try to stay focused and on making the music. So I know he was texting me about trying to do another song, and actually I had to tell him I'm in the middle of writing 3 albums, and the first instrumental one that I'm just about finished with. We're just beginning to record remotely with my live band because, we were all set to go out on tour right before the lockdown happened. And so my keyboard player, Ray Thistlethwaite, is in Sydney, Australia.
Ooh.
2 members that are down in the Los Angeles area. And so I just told everybody, hey, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to write music for an instrumental record and a vocal record, and Eric and I are going to do some crazy techno record, and let's just do it because we're stuck here for until next April when the European tour kicks off. So I'm not just going to sit on the couch and watch Netflix. I'm going to go into my studio and make records.
That's a great lead-in because I was really curious. We've been asking everybody for months now, and it's such a different. All of you each have, like we all do. We're all people, whether you're a musician or you're a painter or you're a plumber or you're a carpenter. We all have our own opinions and our own views and our own perspective on things. And for I think folks who hear these. It must be really neat for them because all of you have a completely different take on what's happening, what you're doing, how you're going to get through it. We're all different, and we all are going through a different experience. We all have the right to kind of a different view of what we're going through and how to view it. And that's one of the things that maybe is missing in our country these days is so often we're looking for somebody to parrot how we look at things or view things. And it's been really useful during this because it reminds me like how we all kind of look at things through our own lens, and we all need to like accept that about each other and kind of work with each other and know that like it's okay that everybody has like their own perspective because we all kind of have our own experience. And the theme I'm getting at is like touring resuming. A lot of folks, everyone looks at it with a different layer of question marks about what will happen. You've named when your next thing will happen. How do you see the touring resuming, Joe, in terms of the ways that shows might happen to keep people safe, and I know you can't. I know you can't look into your magic 8 ball or whatever. But what do you think? Like, because I always remember we'd all be so close to each other, whether you're at a club or an arena, you're right next to each other, and I think I imagine many folks, myself included, might be a bit hesitant to ever do that kind of thing again.
Oh yeah, I feel that the scientific community is going to figure this one out, and they are going to come up with a vaccine that will be as effective as the flu shots, and that there'll be some anxiety that I think will maybe rightfully seep into at least the American experience that I've experienced with no adverse effects in Asia. In other words, in Asia, ever since I've been touring in Asia, people wear masks all the time as a courtesy, because if they think they have a cold, they put on a mask. So through China and Japan and Korea and the other countries of Southeast Asia, all my trips, I've always encountered people with masks. There's no social stigma. It's considered a courtesy to the community. For some reason in the US, it's got some sort of twisted anti-freedom thing, and
Right.
it's got to change, okay? Because people have to realize that the person wearing the mask is doing them a favor.
Right.
They're trying to protect their community and their family. They're not saying, I think you're a zombie. But
Totally.
people, I don't know what it is about the U.S. I mean, we have a way of twisting things. At least here in the mainland, it's a bit strange sometimes. This whole thing about freedom, people just they get it all twisted up, and they build anxiety around anything that interferes with this idea of freedom. But so I think that'll change. But here's the big thing that never gets talked about. Everybody talks about the audience, and when can concerts open for the audience, and people generally will comment saying, I'll buy a ticket if someone is sitting 6 feet away from me. And that's all well and good. We're going to have to figure something out in that regard. However, what they're forgetting about is the real problem, which is the local crew, the band's crew, and the band are backstage in the worst possible situation in a pandemic. We are crowded. We are sharing everything. We're doing it 18 hours in one city per day, and we're doing it probably 6 to 7 days a week. So how does that get solved? So forget
Mm.
about the people in the audience. That's easy. You just sell 2/3 less tickets. Does it work for the venue owner or the promoter? No, they're going to go bankrupt in a month. So that doesn't work for them. And as I said, if you don't solve it for the performers, well, then there's no way to do it. There's simply no way to do it. I want people to think, like, the last time I went on a tour, last year, I did 2 tours with Experience Hendrix. There's maybe 5 or 6 tour buses. They've got up to 12 people on those buses every night. We're on those buses together, sleeping in bunks. We're sharing the coffee machine, the refrigerator, the bathroom, the lounge. And what do we do when we get to the venue or the hotel? We go to a hotel room. We don't know who's been there. We're in elevators. We go backstage. We eat together communally. And there's the local crew there who wouldn't want to see a bunch of virus infected people show up, but they got to deal with us too.
Right.
And we got to deal with the stage is the easy part, because 4 of us walk on stage. We're 6 feet apart. So the only thing that's going to solve this is a vaccine. That's what I guess that's my long-winded
No, it's
way of saying. And I think they will. I really do think they're going to figure this out, and they're going to figure out why some of us don't get it. There's probably a genetic connection. There's a health connection that they already know about. There's an age connection they already know about. But one thing's for sure is if you don't wear a mask, you're going to spread it, and you probably will get it. So people should be wearing a mask and forget about all that other stuff. Just wear the mask.
It's such a good thing to say. It's very important, and it is shocking. I wear it every time I leave my apartment, before I even get to the elevator. So I couldn't concur more, and it is odd. I think, as I was saying to my girlfriend the other day, we were talking about it. I think that when you have Singapore, you mentioned Singapore, those places, there's a lot more group think and a lot more working as a team and a community, and just a different mentality. That we have this individualism, this fierce individualism, which might be some of what you were talking about in America, that has led to this ridiculous kind of putting a value on someone who's wearing a mask that isn't there. Like you said, they're not doing it to offend you, to think that they're better. They're offering it as a service to you. It's kind of like Governor Cuomo said, I do it for you, You do it for me. It's
Yes.
like when he said it, it kind of made a lot of sense. And as we go to wrap it up with you, it's going to be a ways to go before we get to that. Do you think that eventually you think that by the time that April comes, you anticipate being able to do these tours? Like, do you look at this tour as a tentative thing, or you think by then it's going to be? I mean, because obviously a lot of the issues you just mentioned are going to be very difficult. So when you think about these
Yeah.
shows that you've got planned, and you mentioned some of those critical logistics, such as the venue, and can they sell a third of the tickets and still make it work and pay all their bills, and yourself, are you already beginning to figure out alternate plans for how the tour will go, or is this really a tentative thing, this April 2021?
Well, we were very fortunate that when I came, you actually asked me this question. I didn't answer it directly at the beginning of the interview. You were asking me about when I knew about the virus and its implications the first time, and I was down in Los Angeles and San Diego, and I went to see Cirque du Soleil with my son, his girlfriend, and his family, and we were sitting there in the arena at San Diego State, and we were talking about it. And my son's girlfriend's mother is an oncologist, and she works with a lot of doctors in her field. And so we were having a really frank discussion about where this might go, and we were wondering why we were allowed to even go to this event. There must have been, I mean, the arena was cut in half, and there was maybe half populated. So I think there were only about 3,000 people there. But the U.S. hadn't really thought about any kind of a lockdown or sheltering in place yet. But we were obviously thinking about it, and we were talking about the likelihood that my tour would be stopped. And I think by the few days later, we were home in San Francisco, and my wife and I were in a local market, and people were acting really strange.
Mm.
And I remember asking the checker, I said, "What's going on here?" It's like, did I miss something? I was out of town. And you know what he said? He said, "It's the end of the world."
Oh.
And he kind of said it half laughing, but he was really frightened. You could see because nobody had masks and nobody knew what was really happening. But he saw that the customers were clearing out the shelves. And it was completely weird that people would do that. They'd forget about their neighbor and they just, grab all the toilet paper or the soup or whatever. It was just, people started to act weird. And so within 24 hours, I called my managers and I said, you know what, this is happening. Let's not even think for 1 second about business. Let's just think about our families and the band members' families. Everybody has kids, they have parents. Rock and roll is not more important than that. So call everybody and tell them we're not coming. And of course, for me to do that is I mean, that is a big freaking deal. I don't want to swear on your radio show, but that was like, I mean, I was shaking when I realized I had to say this, but I said, I know this is weird, but I swear, I think this is a once in a lifetime thing, and we have to stop this from happening. We got a lot of pushback from around the world because we had to call all these promoters who I've been friends with for 3 decades. They've been booking me since the 80s, and I had to say, this is happening, and some people knew it was happening and they were ready, and others, they got so much pushback from their governments. Like my promoter in France, we weren't allowed to say anything about the French dates until the very end, because if the government doesn't say, that it's a force majeure, this is a big an issue and everyone has to be forgiven of contracts, the promoters were going to get charged for
Wow.
renting the theaters and the venues and every venue that we were going to play in, and it would put them out of business for life. They'd lose their entire life savings just having to pay these fines for canceling. So it was complicated. It was very complicated, but I was relieved, to tell you the truth, because I thought, it's scary enough to go out on tour. You can lose a fortune in a week. I mean,
Sure.
a week of bad ticket sales is devastating. It takes us maybe 6 weeks of touring just to pay off the costs of getting the tour started, especially if we're going overseas, you know. And so it's a tough business deal anyway, in the best of times. And so, but I was relieved in a way because I thought, okay, at least I'm not going to make the people I love sick,
Right.
you know? And that's one thing I couldn't take. I just realized I couldn't take that. I couldn't look at my tech and say, I don't care if you get sick, you got to tune my guitar. It's like, that's ridiculous. I could never do that. So it was just one of those moments where you had to put your heart in front of your brain and realize what the right thing was.
Oh, that's a powerful. I'm so glad you got that in there because that's a very riveting story, especially being in the store. You just can't fake that one.
Yeah.
Final question, because we haven't mentioned it yet, and it would be I would be wrong if I didn't come back with a little bit of it. Your thoughts on the United States, as if we didn't have enough with the virus, which we've talked about extensively. We have this new, and like I said, we seem to have layers of crises going on right now, and the civil rights, Black Lives Matter, questioning over how the police have handled matters, especially relating to Black and African American folks. But when you look at what's this stirring of the pot that is going on in our country, undeniably, and has risen to become especially when you do news, for example, doing what I do, All Things Considered, that show, what we talk about. So you can imagine we've been doing virus for 3 months. Now we're doing police, civil rights, Black Lives Matter every day. When you think about that other crisis that I just put on the table, any thoughts or comments on what's happening now?
Well, ever since I was a kid, it's been happening. And, I was woke out of my childhood in the late 60s. What a turbulent decade. And I was made aware of the struggle of civil rights because it was happening right outside in the streets. It was, my parents were working in places that were affected directly by social unrest. We always had a kind of a United Nations family and group of friends. So it seemed totally incongruous to me that after years of having people of every race and country over for dinner, that suddenly I had to realize that people were not like that. Were not like us. Even neighbors on my block turned out to be racist, and so it's so disturbing that at my age that there seems like nothing's changed. I know that a lot's changed, and we had Barack Obama, we have people of color, and we have women representing our government and running companies, which was unheard of in the 60s and when I was growing up as a young kid. So I know that things are better, but they are nowhere near what they should be. And so I stand with Black Lives Matter, and people who don't understand it, I don't understand them. I can't figure out how people can think like that, can be racist. It just doesn't work with me at all. And so nobody likes violence. I don't know anyone who wants to see destruction. Don't want to see people hurt. They certainly don't want to see people killed. But it doesn't. It's not an excuse for not standing up for what's right. And what's right is that everybody should be treated equal. Everyone should be afforded the equal civil rights. And when there's an abuse of power going on, it has to be stopped. So I don't have the answer. I'm not a politician. I'm not a community leader. But I do believe that there are other politicians and community leaders out there who should be given the chance to help solve this problem once and for all. I really hope so. I feel bad that my generation has handed my son's generation this mess. I always thought when I was a kid that my older siblings and my friends and I, once we became grown-ups, we would solve all these problems. You'd be able to play your guitar as loud as you want. Everyone would be free to marry whoever they want. Everyone would be, free to get any job and live anywhere they want, and everyone would have the same equal rights. Men, women, people of all races and colors. and it didn't work out. And so that means that we screwed up. And I'm embarrassed, horrified that this is the world we gave them. We gave them, as my son's trying to get his career going, this is what his grown-ups gave him. That's pretty terrible, isn't it?
It's a powerful, powerful statement, but it's powerful times. And you are a community member, and you say things that have a positive impact that will resonate deeply with people. I think it's important, like you said, it's important for people to speak their minds and to say what's right, and to say what's on their mind. It's always an honor to talk to you. Definitely the most unusual conversation, of course, we've ever had, but we touched on so many beautiful things about the record Shape Shifting, which is out now. And do I have it right? That is the 18th of your studio records?
You're asking the wrong person. You're probably thinking, yeah, Joe's the right person to ask. I might be the 17th.
Okay,
somewhere along the line, someone was sending out press, little packets that said 18, and I didn't bother counting. I just, after they're released, I start working on the next one. So
it doesn't even matter what number it is. It's a good point. It's one of Joe's records that is touching people again. This one with a lot of different flavors, and hopefully you'll be able to make it back onto tour next year in April, like you're talking about. But people can go to his website, Satriani.com, and stay up to date with all the stuff that you're up to. And obviously you can get the record there and to tune into more of your sessions that you're doing online, Club Joe. And I hope you had fun today. I hope this was cool. I hope you kept your mind thinking, because it was really a lot of fun and a great experience on our end.
Yes, thank you so very much. I know we had to postpone our first scheduled interview, so thanks for hanging in there with me. Aloha, it's Joe Satriani, and there's no better place to be. We're with my friend Dave Lawrence. It's All Things Considered on Hawaii Public Radio. So please make a pledge now and know that we really appreciate it.
I think you have done everything right. All I can do is a virtual, and it really is virtual because we're thousands of miles away, but a big 6 foot away hug, high five. I'll bow. I'll make sure to wear my mask when we do it, but thank you, dude. I really do appreciate it today.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself, okay?
You too. Stay safe.